Do you know what really gets my goat? I'll tell you in a minute. Let's have some nice guitar music and some pictures of the countryside. I'll get my breath back. What ticks me off big time is if you open any paper or magazine, we're really good at creating this sort of mythology around people who've been successful. That whatever it is they've done since day one, since the very first moment on this mortal coil. It's always this chef who was born with a spatula in their hand, or that skier who was taken to the slopes in their nappies. But I think this is pernicious. I think it's a load of old bollocks. I think the problem with it is it makes doing interesting and creative things the reserve of a privileged few. Now, I was walking up here a few days ago and I met a bloke in his 70s, and he was going paragliding, believe it or not, and he'd taken it up when he retired, which is pretty inspiring stuff really. But more than that, he told me something really interesting, that it took him ages to learn, because by the time he got to the end of his working life, he'd sort of stopped learning new stuff, and the kind of muscle for developing new skills had atrophied and shriveled, and it took him a really long time to get a new skill. This is a great time of year to do something new, and I'm not talking about the old New Year, New You rubbish. I'm talking about that little end of Christmas festival that we kind of pack up before it happens, and we're kind of full of mince pies and pissed off with the rubbish telly, and that's 12th night, because 12th night is all about doing something new. It's all about having an epiphany. It's all about turning the world upside down.
Looking at these Dutch master paintings from the 1600s, we get a sense of how Twelfth Night licensed the trying on of a different persona. Someone could be king for a day, someone a jester, and as we know from Shakespeare, a girl could be a boy, or vice versa.
Every Advent, along with the Christmas decks and all the other bits and pieces, we get this lovely little book out of our attic by Jeanette Winston, and it's this sort of treasure trove of stories and thoughts and little Christmas recipes that helps us get through the festive period. So on Saturday, we were sitting in bed reading this bit about Twelfth Night, and I came across something really interesting. I'm going to read to you. The Roman Saturnalia and the Celtic festival Samhain both honour a lord of misrule. The period of the festive overturns the normal strict hierarchies of class and wealth and gender. And what's interesting is that the Christian church was really good at mapping its own festivals and celebrations onto existing pre-Christian or pagan festivals. And that's exactly what they did here, and that is where Twelfth Night comes from. Yeah, it's not quite as climbable as it looked. Even with my long legs. In our culture, I think we've got very locked into meshing what we do and who we are. You know, when you first meet someone, once you've got knowing their name out of the way, the first question is always, oh, what do you do? As if being, I don't know, an accountant or a painter or an industrial shelving inspector is really at the core of who we are. I think we get pretty locked into these work self-identities, and so actually a little bit of misrule or the chance to play at being something different for a while, I think is pretty healthy stuff. Winston talks a lot about how we're good at celebrating creativity and disruption when it comes to companies. You know, think of Uber or Airbnb, it's always like disruptive this, disruptive that. But we're not so good at thinking about disruption when it comes to ourselves. As she puts it, my feeling is that we could all do with more stability in our outward-facing lives, so we could risk disruption to our inner lives, our thinking, our feeling, our imaginative lives. This really chimes with me. About this time last year, I was still really under the weather with chronic fatigue syndrome. You know, what I could do was very limited indeed. I really struggled with socialising. I'd had to give up work. A lot of things really tired me out. But what I found was I could just retreat to my studio and do some quiet painting, and that was an energising thing. More than just needing a break, I feel like my body was very strongly telling me that I needed a period of withdrawal, of retreat, almost of kind of hermitage. So when Jeanette Winston talks about that kind of period of disruption, that chance to creep back into the chrysalis, turn into goo and reform ourselves, that chimes with me, and I think that's what I did last year. And I went in and I spent that time and I came out as something different, and that was a painter, and here I am. But you know what? It's quite important that we don't freight that with too much significance. Our society, you know, our capitalist society, just really wants us to be good at one thing, be the best possible cog we can. We all have this enormous creative, cognitive, intellectual capacity, but it's a muscle that a lot of us never get to exercise. And yes, I've got good at painting, but my suspicion is that you could too, or cooking, or paragliding, or playing the organ. I don't know. It's the capacity is there. It's just letting in the Lord of Misrule and putting on a different mask, you know, taking off the mask of the everyday and playing at being something else for a bit, letting in the Lord of Misrule until perhaps that Lord of Misrule turns the world upside down, and then that's who you are. But Benmo, I hear you cry, I haven't got time to be playing. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got kids to raise. And I hear you. But I think the epiphany for me is that there is a silver lining to being ill, because we don't have much time to play. We don't have much time to try new things. We are in lockstep with the demands that society and our economy and our family put upon us, and it's very, very hard to break out of that. But as unpleasant and as painful and as terrifying as it is, having a serious illness does force you physically to put all those things on hold and to embrace that topsy-turvy world in reverse, or at least gives you the chance to, what you can do, je ne sais quoi, pas. But I'll tell you one thing, is that our forebears knew the value of a good ritual. They had them for a reason. And something like Twelfth Night that we just spend taking the Christmas tree to the dump is a time that our forebears knew was a good opportunity to play at something different, and that play was something worthwhile and something rich, and that there should be days in the year to turn things on their heads. These guys, they like what I've got to say. Look, they're just flocking. They are just flocking to the gospel of the Benmo. They love it. They can't get enough. Last words from me, folks. Today's walk is an absolute corker. I've whacked it on the website, so have a look at that. Do dress like you're going to Siberia, because it's absolutely Baltic up here. Don't come on a weekend when it's sunny, because the Gritstone Trail is like the M60. And don't leave your blinking clementine peel all over the shop, because it's not actually a tangerine grove. Over and out. Bye-bye.